Hey, welcome to the channel. My name is Jason, and here I talk about all things story. And the story I'm talking about today is the novel Elizabeth by, you guessed it, Ken Greenhall. The first novel I read of his was titled Hellhound, and I was completely blown away by it. And so told myself I would read all of his works because I had to see more into this man's mind, and I have not been disappointed. So this book, Elizabeth, it's interesting because it was first published in 1976 under his mother's name. And this was Ken's first novel and pretty amazing debut. Very rarely do I ever find a writer who has such skill with words and storytelling. But, he did write later in life. He's only written a few novels, and so maybe he just really honed his skills before he decided he would try to submit for publication. Whatever he did, it worked. But let's talk about Elizabeth, this very short novel. So what is the hook? What is Elizabeth about? Well, it's about a young girl named Elizabeth. Elizabeth Cutner, she's 14 years old. She's kind of strange, and this novel is told from her perspective in the first person. And early on in the book, her parents die, and she is forced to go live with her grandmother in the city. And her uncle, who, let's say, has some Humbert tendencies from the novel Lolita. Yes, he is having a relationship with his niece, an intimate one. However, because it is told from Elizabeth's perspective, we don't get into his mind. It's not like Lolita. And while I love that novel, I think it's an amazing novel. I can understand why people might find it uncomfortable. But the instances of that kind of relationship are present. However, they're much less frequent than in that other novel. And Elizabeth really doesn't care much for him. That isn't the point of the story. That is not what concerns her the most, even though you think it would be. So Elizabeth meets a strange woman named Frances in a mirror, and she begins to learn about her past and what kind of powers she has throughout the course of the novel. So what did I think? Well, from a plot standpoint, it's pretty simple. It's mostly a family drama. We mostly learn about Elizabeth's ancestry and her past and all the strange goings-ons there. Goings-on. There's clearly a conflict at the beginning with the death of her parents and her strange uncle and the notion of having to move to live in with a grandmother. And there's a dynamic there, a family dynamic with her uncle's family, her grandmother herself, and even her grandfather who's estranged. He doesn't live in the house any longer. But that's kind of the gist of it. It's almost like a small indie horror film, something like Hereditary, where structurally, it's not typical. There's not a lot of ups and downs. It's kind of a flatline kind of book, but I think that the prose and the character are so interesting that it really keeps you hooked, almost hypnotized, I guess, by this strange girl. So let's move on to character. Let's talk about these characters. And I think that, again, Ken Greenhall asserts himself as a master in this regard. Elizabeth is a very interesting character. She's almost sociopathic, psychopathic. She looks at everything objectively, and I think that makes everything more chilling. I'll read a couple of lines for you just so you get the idea, and these are all courtesy of Jonathan Janz, who wrote a very flattering, very eloquent introduction to this novel. So here are some of the examples of Elizabeth's character and Ken Greenhall's mastery. In the night, I would hear the slopping of the lake against the rocks, and half awake, I sometimes mistook it for the sound of someone choking. I reached down and grasped the hem of my wrinkled nightgown and pulled it over my head. I looked again at the mirror and then shivered and moved away, feeling as though a stranger had been looking at my body. I enjoyed the feeling. Their backs were to me, and Mother was making sardine sandwiches. Her hands glittered with oil, and she was carefully lining up the little headless bodies on dark bread. She raised a finger to her mouth and slowly licked it. She was standing too close to James. She was a desperate, gross woman, and I wanted her desperation to increase. So I think with those lines, you can see what he's doing there. It starts off as observational, and then it literally stabs you in the gut with those final lines. And there's so many more of those in the book, and it really speaks volumes about Elizabeth's personality and what you can expect if you read this novel. So the rest of the characters are deep and very fleshed out, and they're great counterpoints to Elizabeth. Sometimes they are supporting her, sometimes they are against her. Inherent conflict ensues, and let's just say it's a very slow but interesting burn. So I think I'll briefly talk about the writing here, even though I already got into it, but it's what I like to call the cinematography of the novel. And again, I'm repeating myself, but Ken Greenhall is a master of line-by-line writing. He creates the mood, the atmosphere, the tension, and everything's literally dripping with it. So if you're a writer, I think there's a lot to learn here, especially from something that's novel is so short. It's only like 160 pages, I think, but man, it really is oozing with detail. And it's a writing style that I respect and really aspire to. So should you read it? Well, I don't think this novel's for everyone. If you're looking for something that's action-packed, something that's like a by the seat of your pants thriller with twists and turns at a breakneck pace, this is not the book for you. But if you're in the mood for something creepily cozy, something that you can curl up on the couch with and absorb every single line and getting deep into the head of this very disturbed and very strange little girl named Elizabeth, I think this is a good one for you. The only criticism I can really give this book is that it didn't consistently keep me engaged. There were a few times where I was kind of drifting, kind of daydreaming, thinking about other things, or some line got me to think about something else. And I know this happens a lot when I read, probably when you read as well. But I remember his first book, Hellhound. My eyes were glued to the page. I was just completely sucked in the entire time. Whereas this one, I feel the same way with a lot of these indie horror films that I really respect and really enjoy. However, the pacing and the structure is a little bit different than what you may be used to. And I think if you go into that book understanding that, if you've read any of Ken's other books, I think you'll really enjoy it and it's not going to be too much of a problem. But I thought I would bring it up. No book is perfect. And so with that said, I'm going to give Ken Greenhall's book, Elizabeth, an 8 out of 10. So much amazing writing, so much amazing characterization, but again, I just felt like it wasn't as strong as something like Hellhound, probably more akin to Childgrave, one that I am sure I will revisit again because I know I will pick up many, many other things, as you tend to do with great art. But if you would like to see me create and not critique, please check out my series, Worth 1,000 Words, where I write a 1,000 word short story inspired by a piece of artwork on the spot every week. And if you like this video, give me a like, subscribe for story-related content, check out my longer form novels in the description below. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.